Welcome inside the CitrusTV studio for a special web edition of Talking Points. I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 in favor of detaining immigrants with criminal records indefinitely before their deportation hearings. Current immigration law says that after a non-citizen who has committed what is considered a deportable crime is released from custody, they should be picked up and held by the government until an immigration court decides whether or not to deport them. But that isn't always what happens. This case was brought before the court by a group of mostly green card holders who argued that if they aren't detained immediately after their release from custody, they should be entitled to the same deportation hearing as other non-citizens who have not committed such an offense. Joining me now to break this all down are Talking Points analysts Brandon Ross and Michael Furnari. Thanks for joining me, guys. So let's start by breaking down who voted what way.
Well, all four liberal justices voted in the minority, and all 5 conservative justices were in the majority. Justice John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Court, has basically become the swing vote nowadays, even though he's not as towards the middle as Justice Anthony Kennedy was when he retired. But all 5 conservative justices were thoroughly entrenched in their own camp, as all 4 justices on the liberal side were in their own.
So if there weren't any surprises on which way people voted, how controversial is the decision?
This was a very controversial decision, largely because I think it touches on a lot of really sensitive legal issues and a lot of legal issues that are really the core of our criminal justice system. For example, the people involved in these detentions will not be given bail hearings. Now, that's something that most people expect when it comes to these criminal proceedings. You expect to have a chance to get your freedom before you're officially convicted of a crime, and that's not really applying here. The other thing that's also very controversial about this is that it touches on double jeopardy, because these people are going to be detained after they've already served time for the crime that they were convicted of. So because of that, I think a lot of legal groups like the ACLU, for example, a lot of those activist groups have really challenged this and really tried to fight back against this, but at this point it seems like they've lost that challenge.
And bringing it back to the Supreme Court bench, it's very controversial there as well. There was a similar case that was decided last year in which Justice Stephen Breyer gave a pretty scathing dissent, and then when this case came around, he basically gave an "I told you so" because of the similar nature to this, and actually took the extra step of reading his dissent from the bench. Justices are typically not supposed to do that, but he took that extraordinary measure with this case.
And obviously, immigration has been such a hot topic issue lately. What are some of the broader implications of this decision?
Well, basically, this is just a huge blow to the rights of non-citizens of the United States who may or may not commit a crime. Basically, there is a difference in the Constitution between the kind of rights that citizens of the U.S. have versus ones that they don't, and this really takes non-citizens down a peg in terms of what they can do when they're put in a situation like this.
And to connect this to kind of the broader Trump phenomenon and the broader theme of his immigration policies, this one seems like a little bit of a break. When it comes to immigration, a lot of people on the right will tend to focus on preventative measures and focus on making sure that people do not come into the country and strengthening that border. This is more of a punitive measure, and I think that's why it's so interesting and why it's raised so many eyebrows, because it's actually more about punishing people once they're already here, not necessarily about keeping people out.
And the Trump administration has obviously ramped up immigration detention. So could this make detention more frequent?
You would think the Trump administration would be inclined to do this, and they probably are. But if you listen to something that Christian Nielsen said earlier this week, it doesn't seem that that's likely.
We don't have facilities to hold the numbers that we're seeing. We're out of detention space. So due to emergent situations at particular areas, field decisions are made as to what we can do to expedite the processing. And in some cases, that is releasing with an NTA as opposed to detaining if we're out of space.
So obviously, with the overcapacity and the necessity to even release those immigrants that have been detained, I don't really see a world in which this could actually ramp up.
And that's a very important point Brandon just touched on, because with immigration law, there's really a difference between what's on the books and what's enforced. Now, of course, obviously it's illegal to be an illegal immigrant, and yet there are millions of legal immigrants in the country. So obviously there's kind of a bit of leeway there with what's enforced and what isn't. It's going to be very telling in the Trump administration and beyond, if he's not the president in a few years, how the executive branch is going to handle enforcing this.
All right, well, thank you both for joining me. This is certainly something we are going to have to keep an eye on as it unfolds. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. For more Talking Points content, be sure to check out CitrusTV.com and tune in on Monday nights at 7:30. For Brandon Ross and Michael Furnari, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo. Thanks for joining us.